Today, we begin our chilling story of murder in San Diego, California, on July 4, 2012. The city, known for its vibrant Independence Day celebrations, was set to enjoy the festivities. However, tragedy struck the patriotic town when police discovered the lifeless body of a decorated Navy veteran in his own home. The murder of this esteemed veteran would unravel a web of deceit and passion that shocked the entire community. San Diego, California, is a proud military town where veterans are held in the highest regard. Among them was James "Jim" Carter, a respected Navy SEAL who served his country with distinction for over 2 decades. Jim Carter was a name synonymous with heroism and bravery. During his military career, he participated in numerous high-stakes missions, earning a reputation that extended far beyond the battlefield. One of his most notable achievements was his involvement in a covert operation in Afghanistan, where his team successfully rescued hostages from a notorious terrorist group. This mission earned him several medals and commendations, solidifying his status as a true hero. After retiring from the Navy, Jim transitioned into civilian life with the same dedication he had shown during his military service. He channeled his leadership skills into founding a private security company, employing many of his fellow veterans. His commitment to giving back to those who had served alongside him was unwavering. Jim Carter was a man who had always prioritized duty and responsibility above all else. At the age of 45, Jim had established a successful security business in San Diego. This new venture was a natural progression from his days as a Navy officer. His life seemed to embody the American dream: a thriving career, a beautiful home, and a loving family. Jim was married to Lisa, a devoted 38-year-old homemaker. Together, they had 2 teenage children: Sarah, a bright and headstrong 16-year-old, and Michael, a curious and energetic 14-year-old. The Carters lived in an idyllic suburban neighborhood, a place where the lawns were always impeccably manicured and the neighbors exchanged friendly waves as they passed by. From the outside, their lives appeared perfect. Their home was a testament to their hard work and achievements. It was a spacious house with a well-kept garden, a place where they celebrated birthdays, holidays, and countless family milestones. However, as Jim's security business flourished, it began to demand more of his time and attention. Late nights at the office, business trips, and the constant pressure of managing his growing company slowly eroded the time he once dedicated to his family. Although Jim made a concerted effort to be present for important events, Sarah and Michael's school plays, soccer games, and family dinners, his absence during the smaller, everyday moments started to take a toll. Lisa, on the other hand, had devoted herself to creating a warm and loving home for her family. She was a caring mother, always attentive to her children's needs, and a supportive wife who understood the demands of Jim's work. Yet, as the years went by, Lisa found herself increasingly lonely. The long hours Jim spent at work left her with too much time to dwell on the growing distance between them. She missed the days when their conversations were filled with dreams and plans for the future. Now, their discussions were reduced to logistics: who would pick up the kids from school, when the bills were due, and what needed fixing around the house. One fateful day, Lisa attended a charity event in San Diego. This annual gala, hosted by a local organization supporting veterans, was an occasion Lisa had always been involved in. It was her way of staying connected and filling the void left by Jim's absence. As she mingled with the other guests, Lisa felt out of place. She smiled and made polite conversation, but her heart wasn't in it. Then she met Rob Johnson. Rob was a successful 40-year-old real estate agent known for his charm and persuasive nature. From the moment he saw Lisa, he was captivated. Her beauty, grace, and warmth stood out even in a room full of strangers. They were introduced by a mutual friend, and what started as a simple exchange of pleasantries quickly turned into a deep and engaging conversation. Rob was immediately struck by Lisa's kindness, and she was drawn to his easygoing nature and quick wit. As they talked, they discovered they had much in common. Rob had recently gone through a painful divorce, leaving him with a sense of emptiness that his successful career couldn't fill. They shared stories about their children, their hopes, and their regrets. For Lisa, it was the first time in a long while that she felt truly heard. The connection between them was undeniable. As the evening progressed, They found themselves gravitating towards each other, sharing stories and laughs that felt natural and effortless. Rob made Lisa feel alive again, a sensation she hadn't experienced in years. It was as if the loneliness that had been growing inside her was suddenly eased by his presence. When the event ended, they exchanged phone numbers under the pretense of discussing charity work, but both knew there was more to it than that. Lisa convinced herself it was just a harmless friendship, a distraction from her loneliness. However, as days turned into weeks, their conversations became more frequent and personal. They began meeting for coffee, then lunches, and eventually, their friendship crossed a line that neither of them could ignore. Lisa felt torn between her loyalty to Jim and the exhilarating new feelings Rob had awakened in her. She never intended to fall for another man, but the more time she spent with Rob, the more she felt seen and appreciated in a way Jim no longer provided. Rob, too, found himself falling deeper for Lisa. The once clear boundaries of her life began to blur, and Lisa found herself caught in a dangerous dance between duty and desire. One evening, after a particularly heated argument with Jim about his long hours, Lisa found herself at Rob's office. They shared a bottle of wine, and emotions got the better of them. What started as a comforting hug turned into a passionate kiss, leading to a night of infidelity. This was the beginning of their affair, filled with stolen moments and whispered promises. Lisa was deeply conflicted. She justified her actions by convincing herself that Jim's absence had driven her into Rob's arms. Meanwhile, Rob, intoxicated by his love for Lisa, was willing to do anything to keep their relationship alive, even if it meant eliminating the competition. On March 2, 2012, Jim returned home earlier than expected, hoping to surprise his family with a special dinner. As he entered the house, he noticed an unfamiliar car parked discreetly down the street. His military instincts kicked in, and he approached the house quietly. Inside, he heard muffled voices and laughter coming from the living room. Curiosity turned into suspicion as Jim slowly made his way towards the sound. Peering through a slight crack in the door, he saw Lisa and Rob in an intimate embrace. The sight of his wife with another man was like a punch to the gut. Jim flung the door open, startling both Lisa and Rob. "Lisa, what the hell is going on?" Jim's voice was a mix of anger and hurt. Lisa, caught off guard, stammered, trying to explain that it wasn't what it looked like. Rob stood up, attempting to compose himself, but Jim was having none of it. He advanced towards Rob, his face red with fury. Jim simply growled at Rob, giving him 5 seconds to leave the house before he called the police. Rob grabbed his coat and left hastily, leaving Jim and Lisa alone. Jim turned to his wife, his expression softening slightly. "Lisa, why? What's been happening to us?" Lisa, tears streaming down her face, admitted to feeling neglected and lonely. She told Jim that she loved him deeply and began to apologize for letting her intrusive thoughts get the best of her. Despite his devastation, Jim realized that he still loved his wife and wanted to save their marriage. He told her they could work through this. The anger was still evident in his voice, but it was now calm and firm. His only condition was that Lisa call Rob right then and there to end the affair and promise never to see him again. "If you want to save this marriage, you need to call him and end it," Jim insisted. Lisa was surprised this was the only condition. She realized how fortunate she was to have a husband who still wanted her despite her foolishness. Lisa nodded, wiping her tears. With trembling hands, she picked up her phone and called Rob. She ended the affair immediately, telling Rob that it was a mistake and that she had chosen her family over him. Rob's voice on the other end was filled with disbelief and anger. He yelled at Lisa, telling her she couldn't do this to him. Realizing he shouldn't be yelling, he began to plead, his voice softening as he reminded her of their sweet moments together. Jim, who was listening to the conversation, couldn't help but cry as he heard painful details. This made Lisa even more resolute, and she yelled at Rob, ending their affair once and for all. Furious and unable to accept the end of his relationship with Lisa, Rob became obsessed. His love for Lisa had turned into a dangerous obsession. On the night of March 5, 2012, Rob made a fateful decision driven by jealousy and a twisted sense of possession. He planned to eliminate Jim. Rob knew Jim's schedule and waited until he was certain Jim would be alone. Wearing gloves and a dark hoodie, Rob broke into the Carter residence through a basement window, which he had secretly unlocked during a previous visit. He moved silently through the house, armed with a silenced pistol he had obtained illegally. Jim, working late in his home office, heard a faint noise but brushed it off, thinking it was just the house settling. Rob approached from behind, his heart pounding in his chest. Without a word, he aimed the gun, but Jim, being the experienced Navy veteran he was, sensed danger and quickly turned to grab the gun. However, he missed and only scratched Rob. Seizing the opportunity, Rob shot Jim twice in the chest. Jim slumped over his desk, dead before he could react further. Rob quickly set to work staging the scene to look like a professional hit. He ransacked the office, scattering papers and valuables to give the appearance of a targeted burglary. He wiped down surfaces to remove any traces of his presence and left the house the way he came in. Rob Johnson's meticulous planning on the night of the murder extended beyond his initial crime. After staging the scene to look like a professional hit, he took great care to erase any trace of his involvement. As he locked the basement window behind him and left the house, he was confident that his carefully crafted ruse would mislead investigators. The next morning, however, the true horror of his actions would unravel in ways he hadn't anticipated. The Carter household was disrupted by the horrifying discovery. Lisa Carter stumbled upon Jim's lifeless body early that morning. Her screams pierced the quiet neighborhood of San Diego, a sound that would become etched in the community's memory. The San Diego Police Department responded swiftly, arriving on the scene to begin their investigation. The scene inside Jim's home was chaotic. Forensic experts noted clear signs of a struggle. The office was ransacked, papers scattered, and valuables disarrayed. Yet, there was something about the execution of the crime that suggested it was more than a random burglary. The meticulous nature of the scene's staging hinted at a level of professionalism that puzzled the investigators. They noted that this wasn't a typical crime of opportunity but one that had been carefully planned. Detectives arrived at the Carter residence early the next morning, finding Lisa in a state of shock. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and she seemed overwhelmed by the enormity of her loss. Lisa was brought to the police station for questioning. The detectives hoped to gain insight into her relationship with Jim and any possible motives for the crime. Initially, Lisa's responses seemed to paint a picture of normalcy. She spoke highly of Jim, describing him as a well-liked and respected man with no known enemies. She emphasized that their family life was relatively ordinary and that Jim had been a man of good reputation. Despite her calm demeanor, there were inconsistencies in her statements that raised red flags for the detectives. When questioned about Jim's behavior in the days leading up to his death, Lisa hesitated. She mentioned that Jim had seemed distracted, but she insisted that nothing was out of the ordinary. Her reluctance to delve deeper into his recent behavior suggested she was concealing something. Eventually, under persistent questioning, Lisa revealed that she had been having an affair with Rob Johnson, the same man who would later be the prime suspect in Jim's murder. Lisa explained that she had ended the affair just days before Jim's murder. She described Rob's reaction to the breakup as unfavorable, but she didn't initially suggest that Rob might be involved in Jim's death. Her tone and body language, however, hinted at an underlying fear and uncertainty. The detectives noticed these signs and decided to investigate Rob Johnson more thoroughly. Rob was brought in for questioning. From the outset, Rob was visibly nervous. His hands shook, and his voice was unsteady. His alibi for the night of March 5th was that he had been home alone, watching TV. When detectives pressed him for more details, his story began to fall apart. Rob initially claimed he hadn't seen Lisa for weeks, but he later admitted to meeting her just days before the murder. This contradiction raised suspicions about his truthfulness. Further scrutiny revealed more issues with Rob's alibi. He had previously claimed no contact with Lisa after their breakup, yet phone records showed multiple calls and text messages exchanged between them during that period. This discovery added another layer of doubt to Rob's innocence. Colleagues and acquaintances also provided troubling information about Rob. They described his obsessive behavior toward Lisa and his volatile temper, which painted him in a negative light. These character assessments, combined with Rob's nervous demeanor and shaky alibi, led investigators to strongly suspect his involvement in Jim Carter's murder. Forensic experts worked diligently to gather and analyze evidence from the crime scene. Inside Jim's office, they found a partial fingerprint on the edge of the desk. This fingerprint did not belong to any family members, raising immediate suspicion. The forensic team lifted the print and ran it through the national database, which matched it to Rob Johnson. This was a critical breakthrough. Further examination revealed traces of DNA under Jim's fingernails. It appeared that Jim had fought his attacker before being killed. The DNA analysis confirmed that it belonged to Rob, providing concrete evidence that placed him at the scene of the crime. The investigation was bolstered by surveillance footage from a neighbor's security camera. Positioned to capture the street outside the Carter home, the camera recorded a shadowy figure entering the house on the night of the murder. After a thorough review, detectives identified the figure as Rob Johnson. The time stamp on the footage perfectly matched the estimated time of Jim's death, providing a crucial link between Rob and the crime. With this compelling evidence, detectives moved quickly. On March 25, 2012, Rob Johnson was arrested at his home. The news of his arrest spread rapidly, causing shockwaves throughout the community. People were stunned that a well-known real estate agent could be implicated in such a heinous crime. The media coverage was intense, with newspapers and TV stations highlighting the betrayal of a veteran who had served his country with honor. Jim Carter was remembered fondly for his military service and dedication to his family and community. The betrayal and murder at the hands of his wife's lover painted a tragic picture of how love and obsession could lead to devastating consequences. Rob was charged with first-degree murder, and the community rallied around the Carter family, offering support and condolences. The trial of Rob Johnson began on June 15, 2012. The courtroom was packed with community members eager to see justice for Jim Carter. The prosecution aimed to portray Rob as a jealous lover driven by obsession. They began by detailing Jim's honorable service in the Navy, showcasing his medals and commendations. This presentation moved the jury and audience, emphasizing the tragedy of Jim's loss and the gravity of the crime. Lisa Carter took the stand, her eyes filled with tears. She confessed to her affair with Rob, explaining how it had started due to feeling neglected by Jim's long work hours. She described her guilt and regret, expressing that she never imagined the affair would lead to such a tragedy. Lisa recounted the night of the murder, detailing how she had ended things with Rob in hopes of saving her marriage. Her voice trembled as she described her shock and fear upon learning of Jim's death. She admitted to initially hiding the affair from the detectives but later realized Rob might be responsible. Forensic experts presented the evidence they had meticulously gathered. They explained the significance of Rob's partial fingerprint on Jim's desk, his DNA under Jim's fingernails, and the surveillance footage showing Rob entering the Carter home. The evidence was clear and damning, linking Rob directly to the crime scene. Character witnesses testified about Jim Carter, describing him as a dedicated and honorable man who loved his country and family. They spoke about his bravery in the Navy and his efforts to help other veterans through his private security company. These testimonies painted a picture of Jim as a hero, making the loss even more poignant and Rob's actions more villainous. The prosecution argued that Rob was a jealous lover driven by obsession and desperation. They pointed out the inconsistencies in Rob's alibi and his nervous demeanor during questioning. They emphasized the forensic evidence and surveillance footage, leaving no doubt about Rob's guilt. The trial was emotionally charged, with the community's respect for veterans underscoring the gravity of the case. The testimonies and evidence presented a heartbreaking story of love, betrayal, and murder. On August 10, 2012, the jury found Rob Johnson guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read, and Rob showed no emotion. The community felt a sense of justice, but the pain of losing Jim Carter, a beloved veteran, lingered. Lisa Carter was left to deal with the fallout of her actions. Overwhelmed with guilt and regret, she sought therapy to cope. She focused on being there for her children, Sarah and Michael, who were deeply affected by their father's death. Lisa worked hard to rebuild her life, attending school events and ensuring her children knew they were loved. The community, recognizing her efforts to make amends, offered support through meals, help with chores, and a listening ear. A memorial service was held to honor Jim Carter's memory. Family, friends, fellow veterans, and community members gathered to celebrate his life and military service. People shared stories of Jim's bravery and dedication, from his time in the Navy to his work with other veterans. The service was emotional, with tears shed and heartfelt tributes given. A flag was presented to Lisa and their children, symbolizing Jim's service and sacrifice. The community pledged to keep his memory alive and support the Carter family as they moved forward. As we delve deeper into this harrowing tale, it's impossible not to ponder the true cost of Lisa's fleeting desire for affection. Was Rob's descent into madness purely fueled by his love for Lisa, or was there something darker lurking beneath the surface? Could Jim have somehow anticipated this tragic end, given his military instincts, or did his trust in his wife blind him to the danger? What if Lisa had chosen to stay loyal? Could Jim still be alive today? Speculating is easy, but the reality is sobering. Jim Carter, a decorated Navy veteran, lost his life due to a deadly mix of betrayal and obsession. Now, Rob faces life behind bars while Lisa is left to pick up the shattered pieces of her once perfect life. So, what do you think? Should Lisa bear some of the blame for this tragedy? Was her role in this fatal love triangle a result of loneliness, or did she unknowingly set the wheels of disaster in motion? We're eager to hear your thoughts on this case. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights into true crime stories where the lines between love, obsession, and tragedy often blur beyond recognition. We have many more stories where the pursuit of desire becomes the catalyst for devastating consequences. Be sure to check them out.